Well, let's look at Aspen. Aspen is one of those shares also that everybody is quite keen on. And Peter asked me about Aspen. He actually dropped an email and he said, listen, I am a little bit, there's a nice Afrikaans word that I don't want to use on the program, but I know you guys will know that he said I had enough of the stock. So, I think he just want to get an opinion, because look at Aspen here. I mean, look at it. It almost looks like my into properties that I mentioned before. Well, it started around 460. It just fell off a cliff. And this is now a classical example of, like we've just discussed, Sasol here. And look at this strong support that held Aspen for a long period of time. And if you look at it, you can almost see here, there's a beautiful triangle that was in place. And everybody thought that the stock will never drop below 243 Rand 22. Now, Peter, when that broke, it really turned ugly. And look at this triangle. Now, this triangle's formation, the target, let's just get the target. That is the extent from the top to the support. Now, let's just extend it to the downside here. There you are. It's almost right at the bottom where it reaches target. But remember, and I've got an old friend of mine, he's in his 80s, and he's been in the market for so many years. He said to me, Frans, in a weak market, there's never a good stock. Then everything goes. Now, this is what's happening to Aspen. We are sitting in a weak market, and it's going lower and lower and lower. And I will just say to myself, this triangle has reached its target, but what are we going to do? And I know he doesn't want to buy some more stock, because he said to me, listen, I am more than sick and tired of this stock. So I will say I will use this line. There's the resistance line. And I will not buy Aspen before it gets above this resistance line. And if I cannot get it above it, you don't buy it. Now that line will only turn into a support at 105 Rand and 38 cents. Below that, the momentum is down, and don't fool yourself, it can go even lower. We've seen stocks now this year. I want to mention a few: EOH, Sasol, Into Properties, Capital and Counties. Well, we don't even want to mention Steinhoff, that was already a year back. But there's so many stocks that just fell off a cliff. Omnia, Tongaat. So be careful. These stocks can go much, much lower than everybody's anticipated. So let's hold on to the stock. We don't buy it. And then, of course, everybody wants to know about Naspers. Now, remember, I'm always nervous about a company that goes out with a fundamental change, like Naspers is going to take some of their investments over to the European market, and that makes it difficult to analyze it. And I always say to myself, if you look at the stock and there's a fundamental issue, I call it a side effect. Now, if you've got a fundamental issue and you've got a side effect, your technicals does not work that well. So I'm a little bit nervous just to say buy Naspers or sell it or whatever, because there's some tax issues here. If you sell it, and you must decide if you want to take your investment or part of it over to Europe, or you want to stick to the South African one. And that's why when you've got this nervousness in a stock, you usually find what we call a symmetrical triangle. Now, a symmetrical triangle is, and this is Joe, by the way, that asked about the stock. This symmetrical triangle just tells you that everybody is uncertain. And while the stock is in this symmetrical triangle, it just tells you that nobody is 100% sure. And only above this resistance line, it can break to the upside or below that. So I think for those that's got Naspers, personally, I think you need to ask your financial advisor to tell you what he thinks with your ideas, what you should do. Technically, at the moment, let's wait for it, and let's look at this big gap here right at the end of this symmetrical triangle. It's still wide and open. It can move anyway. So for me personally, I think sit on your hands here. Let's have a look at the Rand. Now, Peter wanted to know about the Rand dollar, and this is the guy that always export and import stuff, and he says to me, listen, Frans, on the email, I would like to buy some stuff overseas and I need to bring it back to South Africa. And I must pay for it. Now, if you look at the rand dollar, and I'm looking here at a weekly chart, first of all, look at your stochastic. Your stochastic is oversold at the moment, and it tells you that the rand can easily weaken, and we just playing around with this 40-week moving average. This 40-week moving average is either a support or a resistance, and at the moment we're right at that. So we're not 100% sure what to expect here. But if you need to pay for some goods, I will say use this 40-week moving average as your guideline, because every time that the 40-week moving average either turns into a support or remains a resistance, it forces the rand to a side. So Peter, if you want to buy below, if you want to pay for the goods, 14 Rand 20 is your pivot. Above 14.20, the rand can easily weaken, and below 14.20, it can strengthen. And of course, the big level is the 14 Rand psychological level. But let's have a look here. Same with Naspers here. We're sitting on a symmetrical triangle here. The gap in the front is starting to narrow up. But this stochastic tells me that we can rather see a weakening rand than a strengthening rand. Because look what happened in the past. In January, the moment the stochastic was low, it went up. Then, even in November 2018, it went up. Same thing there, and even now, it started to show some signs of weakness. So, I personally believe that we can rather see a weakening rand above this 40-week moving average. And I will only get positive if it breaks the psychological level of 14 Rand. Then I think we can strengthen from there. Well, let's look at Gerrit. Gerrit asked me about Pan-Af resources. And he's of course a gold bull, because if you've got Pan-Af resources in your account or in your portfolio, you are bullish about gold. So look at this nice chart, and we've showed this chart before. It fell off a cliff first of all till about 2018 January, but look what we see now. And this is what I like about it, Gerrit. I like this nice slope, and this is now a beautiful slope. This is what I call a beautiful ascending channel, and what happens? It's a nice slope of about 30 degrees. Now this is an ideal share to keep into your portfolio if you've got a long-term view. Look what happens. It bounces up to the resistance line, it comes back to the support, bounces up, it comes back. So every time that it comes back to the support line, it almost gives you an opportunity to buy. So Gerrit, I will hold on to my stock, because I've seen in his email that he still got the stock, so I'm not going to worry about that. So every time that it gets to the support line, you can still buy it. Now, I will only get nervous. Let's maybe just draw in a line here, and you'll see it comes almost to the bottom of this trend, of this beautiful uptrend. And that is sitting exactly at 1 Rand 82. The moment it's 197, and Gerrit, this chart really looks good. There's nothing wrong with it, and I will hold on to it while it's above 182. I think we can maybe see some more advances in time to come. Then, of course, let's have a look at, I just want to get my line here quickly. Just give me a second. There you are. Let's, of course, look at Anglo Gold. Leon actually bought the stock. He said, he mentioned a few months ago. That can be, I didn't remember that. But he bought the stock, and he's now nervous. He wants to maybe lock in some profit. Now, the moment I hear that word of lock in some profit, he means that he wants to maybe look at selling it now. Look what happened here, Leon. There's some candles here. Every time that it got to around this 272 Rand 60 level, there is some upper shadows here. That usually warns me a little bit that there is some sellers around. Now, even that little top and that little top make it what we call a beautiful double top scenario. And what happened, there was a gap here to the downside. There's also a gap there, but there was a gap there. It closed it yesterday with this ugly bearish candle. This support, this shadow tells me that there is a little bit of buyers here. But I mean, if you are still in a profit and you're happy with it, my clue will be this horizontal support line. And by the way, why do we sometimes use horizontal support lines? You know what? Horizontal support lines I've seen during the years are nice pivot points. Below that, it can go lower. Above it, it can go higher. Yes, you can get skew ones, but I like to get involved with some horizontal lines because look what happened. Every time that it got to around this 247 level, there's 1, 2, 3, almost 5 candles telling me that there was some support around there. And look what happened in the past. If I just extend this line, okay, look what happened. Every time that it played around this level, it either made up its mind to go up or high. So a horizontal support line or a resistance line is quite a nice handy tool to look at. Well, Gerrit, if you look at the stock and there's the low, if it goes below the level, there you are. But if it gets below 248.55, I think this double top scenario can maybe take it even lower, and that will also be again the extension. Let's just see where it can go to, Gerrit. If I just use that extension there you are. It can maybe reach for this gap. There you are. There's the gap. There's the gap. And so if you want to lock in profits, that first horizontal line that I gave you, that is the clue. And it can maybe reach for to close this gap. And this gap will close below, there's the gap. The gap is between 232.52. That's that shadow there. And there's the high of this little candle. And that gap will close at 229.33. And remember, gold stocks are not usually for long-term investors. It's more for a trader. But I mean, look what happened this year. I mean, everybody wrote gold off for so many years. And in actual fact, this year, it was one of the stern performance of the market. Now, just imagine in May month, Anglo Gold was 164.24, and it trades now close to 253. There's only a few stocks. In actual fact, I don't think any stocks except for the golds and the platinum that performed well. Well, thank you so much for watching the show, and we will talk again.